What's up, y'all? Welcome back to our Fish the Moment live stream. Today, Randy and I are going to be discussing if you can be too versatile in your fishing. This is a kind of a topic that I think about all the time, something that I grew up struggling with. Not maybe struggling with, but trying to understand better. So hopefully we can give you guys a better understanding of this topic. Randy, how's it going tonight?
Doing good, Johnny. How's it going there, man?
It's awesome. Just trying to get a bunch of maps out, get new content for the viewers. We're doing giveaways. It's kind of crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. How's everything for you?
Yeah, we've been really busy with our maps. The lake breakdowns we're doing right now. We're just into it in a really big way right now. So it's I could literally spend 100 hours a week working on them if you had the time to do it, and everybody seems to be liking them really good.
For sure. Well, I'm excited about those as well. And there's so much to talk about, guys. So many housekeeping items to take care of. So I want to actually run through a few housekeeping items before we start the stream, just to let everyone get in. And if you're watching this back afterwards, you can skip ahead if you want to get to the content or if you're on the podcast. But a couple of things really quick. Let me just start sharing my screen because I want to give you guys just a quick update. Let me pull this up really quick. Just give me 1 second. Randy, basically what I want to start up talking about is something that we just added for you, which I'm really happy about, is that we're now offering on-the-water lessons through Randy for you guys to actually go out and fish with him on the lake. He is offering classes on a lot of different topics. This is all on fishthemoment.com. You can do basically classes on finding bass based on seasonal patterns. You can also do advanced techniques, training with Randy for different times of the year, winter, spring, fall, things like that. And Randy is an awesome instructor, as you've seen from the channel, and you can go out in the boat with him, and you can see the available lake options. It's kind of in that Missouri, Oklahoma, Northwest Arkansas area. It's $550 for 8 hours, and you can bring up to 2 people for the lessons, so you can split that cost. It's really exciting, and if you go to fishmoment.com, go to On the Water Lessons, you can actually contact Randy, just give him your name, your email, and he'll set up the lesson for you and just give a description of what you're looking for, which is pretty exciting. I'm super pumped about that. I used to do these all the time, Randy. I just have not had time with the videos and everything else going on, so super exciting. Anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I've been doing the instructional jerkbait fishing trips, here in the Ozarks for the past 2 or 3 years, and it's really been going great. And it's a great avenue for somebody that wants to learn about not just jerkbait fishing, but any technique. If you can go out in the boat with somebody that can actually show you the finer details in person of it, it has a lot bigger impact than if you just read about it or watch a video on it. And that's how I learned, some of the mentors I fished years ago, getting in the boat with them, seeing exactly how they set up on structure, exactly how they work the bait, the cadence in real time. So yeah, anybody interested, shoot us a note.
Sure, and Randy is basically, he's not like an electronics expert, kind of like where I'm at. So we don't have any electronics training available for Randy. He's not going to go out and like set up your graphs and teach you how to find fish offshore with your electronics. This is much more on technique specific and like fish finding in general. So just think about it that way. And I do see over here in the comments, guys, that you're sad that I didn't say what's up to you guys. Sorry, I was just getting excited to get in the stream. But we got Timo, Ernest, Gary, Michael, Bassman, Dan, Mike, James, Mike, more mics, a lot of people on, and sorry for not saying hi to you guys at the start. And thanks, Dylan, for the 99-cent super chat. Thank you so much. So, anyways, I'm excited about that. And then another thing that we're offering is some personalized map breakdowns. You guys may have heard about this on the last live stream, but we're also breaking down lakes on request, where actually you can get a personalized breakdown where we will pick out spots for any lake across the country, even if there's no contour line maps, Navionics, Google Earth, anything like that. And these personal map breakdowns are in addition to our seasonal map breakdowns that we normally do. And to make sure you're not picking lakes that we're going to break down in the future, we put together a seasonal map breakdown schedule of all the lakes we plan to break down for the fall season. So if your lake isn't on this list, then most likely we're not going to be doing it, especially if it's a smaller lake. So definitely do a personal map breakdown if you're interested. There are only 4 available each week so that Randy's not just making maps literally all day and all night. And I restock these every Monday for you guys. So anything else to add there?
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into these maps. It's something we don't slop through. Each one of these maps they take a lot of focus, and there's a lot of data to them, a lot of details, a lot of information that have to be compiled and put into the format that you set up. So there's a lot of man hours that go into each one of these.
Sure, and the information is awesome. I'm sure some of you guys have purchased these map breakdowns, and you know the quality of the content there and the spot selection. So super excited about that. And the last thing is that we're offering some more virtual seminars. I have a new advanced bass fishing electronics class available. The last couple I've done have been big hits. Everyone seems to really enjoy them. And I have a maximum attendee list of 30, so I can actually interact with you guys and answer questions and stuff. And there's only 30 spots available. The last one filled up 2 weeks before the class started. So sign up as soon as you can. It's September 17th. If you are interested to know about how the class went, literally just go in the chat here or go through the comments of this video, and you'll probably see a lot of guys who took the class and who enjoyed. But I'm really excited about these advanced electronic seminars. They're focused on helping you catch fish with your electronics, not just the settings, and I'm not repeating any of my content that I've used in my YouTube videos. It's all brand new, fresh content that you've never heard before from me, and it really goes through the nitty-gritty of how to use your electronics to go pinpoint fish, catch them, which baits to throw offshore, how to optimize your time offshore, all kinds of stuff that's really crucial if you want to take your electronics fishing to the next level. So, yeah, that's that. And then we're also going to be offering some shallow water seminars with Randy as well, so be on the lookout for those. So that was a lot of stuff, housekeeping to take care of, but anything else to add there, Randy, before we get into the main topic?
Yeah, just looking forward to tonight. This is a really good topic we got. It's actually one that I have debated and thought about for decades, because I mean it's almost like there's not a right or wrong answer. There's some stuff I've learned about it, but I'll be really curious to, once we get into this conversation, to hear some of the feedback from the listeners on it.
For sure. So let me just jump in and just preface this conversation. Basically, what I've always been thinking my whole time when I was growing up fishing is that being versatile is a good thing. The more versatile you are, and by versatility I mean being able to fish a lot of different techniques, whether it's going fishing shallow or offshore. That's what I tried to do when I started tournament fishing when I was 9 years old or 10 years old until I was 21 years old. All I tried to do was be as versatile as possible, so I could jump from offshore ledges to shallow grass to middle of like the mid-depth cover, and then go flip or throw a square bill or do anything. And I feel like that's actually a really big trend in top-level tournament competition. If you see the guys who are really excelling, you have Jacob Wheeler, you have Brian Thrift, Jordan Lee. All those guys can catch them shallow and they can catch them offshore. And that makes it really appealing to your average weekend angler. They are like, well, I want to be versatile too. I want to be able to go offshore and go up shallow and do it all. But unfortunately, one thing I've realized is that for the average weekend angler, being versatile is not necessarily the best way to be successful at a local level from a tournament perspective, or just to have the most fun when you go fishing, because becoming versatile takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. You have to have thousands of hours in the water, and it really isn't necessarily the best technique from a tournament perspective. So we want to get into this whole topic and kind of dig into it. So Randy, let's just start out by talking about versatility in general. Like, what are your thoughts on being versatile versus like being like a Denny Brower or Tommy Biffle who just only flips, or a Mark Rose who basically is only fishing offshore now, stuff like that?
Well, I think versatility, it's sort of a conversation. It's like versatility versus strength. And it's constantly morphing and constantly changing as the sport evolves too. But one thing that I do know for sure is most of the time, if you break down all the tournament wins, like over the past 30 years, most tournaments are won by specialists, guys that are good flippers, guys that are really good at spinnerbait, guys that are good at offshore with their electronics, or specialists that win tournaments. The guys that are able to win being versatile are rare. They're like the top level tier guys, the guys that you mentioned, the Wheelers, the Thrifts, the Lees, that type of stuff. So it's almost like when you talk about those guys that are simply on a different level, there's 10 guys in this sport that nothing applies to them. They are so far advanced on a different level that none of the conversations that we have apply to those guys. They're on a completely different playing field. But from what I've seen in my experience is a lot of times when you try to be versatile, Say, for example, you want to learn how to drop shot. Most of the time, by the time that you want to pick up a technique that's already well known, it's already peaked. That particular technique is already peaked by the time you hear about it. Like with the Alabama rig, like with the Cinco, like with some of the Japanese jerk baits and crankbaits. Most of the time, when the average person sees about it, it's already like on its way down. But from my experience, what I've seen about versatility is that you got to like identify what your style and personality is as an angler. It's almost like like when you're 18 or 20 years old, you're trying to find your place in the world. You don't really know exactly maybe what direction you want to go into, but you're trying to figure that out. And it's the same with bass anglers. Every person out there has to develop their own style and their own energy around their fishing. Now, that can include, being a versatile angler. It can be a semi-versatile angler, or it can be somebody that does nothing but fish their strengths. You take anglers that are known for fishing their strengths, like a Tommy Biffle, a Denny Brower, a Jimmy Houston back in the day, a John Cox now that just bucks any other trend but the way he likes to fish shallow. You got to me, the ideal scenario is to like develop one or two techniques that you really like to fish and you really feel that you're good at, and then try to expand your versatility around your strengths, but never vary or take that much energy away from your strength. Always have your strengths as a foundation. For example, mine is my strengths are flipping and jerkbait fishing. And I know if I get set up where the water is laid out for that and the time of year is laid out for that, 90% of the time I'm going to have a really good tournament. Now, the rest of the year, I have to expand my strengths into versatility. And a lot of that, like you said, it's something that it comes from years on the water. You just can't instantly be versatile. Some people have the ability to take information and they can assimilate it quicker than other people. Some people can just like read about something or hear about something and take it to the lake and be successful immediately. Other people have a slower, learning curve to go with that. So I guess to get back to your question, Johnny, to me, there's three. We break this up into three things: being versatile, being semi-versatile, or fishing your strengths all the time. And you can do well at either three of those.
And one thing I've just seen in the comments here, one Mike says Jacob Wheeler is versatile and he's the best. One thing that I think a lot of people get in trouble is that they try to emulate Jacob Wheeler or the top name pro like that. One thing you have to understand about Jacob, I've known Jacob since he was really young. He didn't go to college, and in high school, all he did was fish. That dude literally eats, breathes, sleeps, does everything fishing. That's all he does. That's all he cares about. And since the time I've known him, when you talk to him, his mind is thinking about fishing and the next fish he's going to catch 24/7. And a lot of guys, they're thinking, okay, why is he so versatile? Why is he so good? Well, imagine if you didn't go to college, and every single hour that you spent in college, in all that time you're studying, going to class, and hanging out with friends, and going to frat parties, or whatever you were doing, instead you were on the lake fishing, and you were perfecting your craft, and trying to catch him offshore, trying to catch him up shallow. That's why Jacob is so good. He spent so many hours in the water. Same thing with Brian Thrift or Jordan Lee. Like Jordan Lee, he went to college, but he was fishing like 95% of the time he was in college. Like he probably didn't go to class all that often. He just was fishing. But he was that good, he knew that was a path he could take. And that's why these guys who are really young are so good, because that's all they've done their whole life is just fish. Well, now let's take a guy who is a weekend warrior. Let's say he has some kids, or he has at least a wife, he has a full-time job. You can't fish maybe but on the weekends. Well, if you think about it, all these guys who are super versatile, they literally are fishing 4, 5, 6 days a week for the past 10 years, 15 years. That's why they can become versatile. If you're fishing 4 days a month, maybe 6 days a month, and you're trying to become super versatile and learn how to fish offshore ledges, fish shallow water, fish deep water, all of it, you're not going to learn any of those skills to a proficient level. That's why for myself, I'm not the best shallow water angler. I'm not the best at going and flipping down the bank and stuff like that. Yes, I can do it. I'm pretty good, like Randy said, assimilating new techniques pretty quickly. But from my time on the water, I've put 80% of my time on the water to fishing offshore. So I'm really, really good offshore. I'm not that great up shallow though, just because I haven't put the time in on the water to learn the way the fish work, the fish behavior, how the conditions change the fish, how the time of day affects it, the best presentations, the slowing my boat down. There's so many little nitty gritty things. And that's why I don't really do that much shallow water fishing. But I'm so good offshore, I don't need to do a lot of offshore fishing or shallow water fishing. And this is where I'm trying to get at with this question of versatility is if you're not fishing 6 days a week or 5 days a week as a local tournament angler or just fun fishing, it's probably better for your success long term over 2-3 years to pick one style that you want to fish and master that or spend 80% of your time doing that. Because you're going to become a lot better at that one technique, and when the fish are in that position, you have a really good chance to win. If those fish are offshore on ledges and points and humps, you have a really good shot of winning. Now, if the fish are up on the bank spawning or shallow water flipping, you're probably not going to do that well. But if you can, you have to kind of take your wins, take your losses. If you're going to do this, you may not win every single tournament, and there's no way you're going to do that anyways if you try to be versatile. But when the fish are in your wheelhouse, you have a really good chance of winning versus being a jack of all trades, but really like master of none sort of thing. So if that was a long rant there, Randy, what do you think on all that?
Oh, but yes, that's right on as far as being able to win. Most, like I said, most wins are come. If you're a master or you're really proficient at a technique. But a lot of it also on this versatility versus strength deal has to do with the geographical location of where you fish. Because I'm guessing most of our listeners out there, there's probably not a lot of touring pros listening. They're probably more local and regional anglers fish local and regional stuff. So say, for example, if you live down in New Orleans and you fish the Louisiana Delta all the time, there's no need for you to know how to fish offshore structure and get good with your electronics deep because everything that you catch down there is going to be in less than 3 or 4 feet of water, around shallow vegetation. So, depending upon what you want to get out of this sport and what your long-term goals are as far as competitive fishing or just recreational fishing, that's what determines how much energy you should probably put into your versatility. Say, for example, you live on the Potomac River, and the only place you fish is the tidal Potomac or the Chesapeake Bay Potomac, that type of stuff. That is a situation, and there's a lot of people out there like that. That's a situation where you want to become, an expert at a handful of techniques. Same here in the Ozarks. I mean, there's a handful of techniques that win tournaments. Those techniques change season by season, but everybody that wins those tournaments are masters of that. They're masters of the Alabama rig. They're masters of fishing deep with their electronics, whatever. They don't need to know how to do 100 different techniques. I mean, so, in my own case, versatility can hurt me or help me because I fished so many places across the country and I know how to do so many things good, but I can do a few things great. And that's an important thing to remember is being able to do a lot of things good but always have a few things to fall back on that you're really great at. So, this conversation of versatility, a lot of it has to do with what your expectations are as an angler. You can be versatile within your own region, but you may not need to be as versatile as like a touring pro that can fish, anything from 6-pound test line, 40-foot deep, to flipping mats with 65-pound braid in Florida and know exactly when to make that change. And here's another big thing about versatility is, yeah, you can watch a YouTube video or you can go do anything and you can sort of rudimentarily do that, but you have to know when to make that change. You have to know based upon the environmental conditions that are previous to you when you got to the lake, what's coming up, what's current, everything else. There's just an unlimited amount of controlled and uncontrolled variables that make that determination of when you need to make a technique change and become more versatile or less versatile. So it's every situation is different. Like I said, if we got some questions from the viewers, it doesn't matter where they're at, every answer is going to be different on versatility versus strength.
For sure. And, with me, I have always, again, I tried to be really versatile when I was growing up. I wanted to learn how to be offshore, shallow, all this stuff. And actually, I was really good at that when I was fishing in like the high school ranks, the junior ranks. And I would always be able to go consistently catch fish. I was like the king of angler of the year. I won every angler of the year of every club pretty much I've ever been at. I don't think I ever didn't win angler of the year in a club that I was in, even in college. I was just really good at that because I would always catch them. But I also wasn't very good at winning like bigger tournaments. I won some state championships, but I finished a lot. Like I have a lot of seconds through 10th place finishes in big like national, like high school, college, things like that. I've won a couple events, but I was really good at like getting that middle place finish. And for a lot of the Elite Series pros, that's a really good skill to have. If I went and fished the Elite Series, having that versatility would have served me really, really well. And that's kind of where I was preparing myself for as I was in high school and college. But from a local tournament perspective, that's not that great because who cares if you're in a local jackpot where first place is $500 and third place is $75, you get your entry fee back. Getting a third place finish every single time isn't really that fun. So if you want to go out there and actually win tournaments and do that, being an expert is always, in my opinion, going to help you win more tournaments, be more successful at that local level. Because, yeah, you might suck in 6 tournaments out of the year, but 2 tournaments out of the year, you're going to be in the hunt to win that tournament. And that, a lot of times for an angler who doesn't get to fish that often, is maybe a lot more appealing. Now, if you want to be that angler of the year or you want to just be consistent and that's what your deal is, then go for the versatility. Just don't expect that you're going to be able to go compete and win against these guys who catch 18 pounds in the tournament. Because if you even look at like your local standings, you probably know that there's like 3 dudes who win in March. There's 3 dudes who win in April. There's 3 dudes who win in the summer and 3 dudes who win in the fall. And it's because those guys are experts in the fall or the spring or certain type of technique. But the guys who win in the fall, they might suck during the summer or they might do terrible in the spring because they're not an expert in that time of year. It's very, very common. Would you agree with that, Randy?
Yeah, no doubt. And I've got a great example for that, Johnny. Let me use Kentucky Lake in June as an example. And okay, Kentucky Lake in June is, it's famous. It's the offshore. It's the ledge deal. It's all these mega schools out on the main river ledge. We've all heard about it. It's famous. You've seen so many tournaments about Kentucky Lake in June. And I'll use my own situation in this. I fished a lot of tournaments at Kentucky Lake in June. And the past 3 or 4 tournaments that I have fished on Kentucky Lake in June, I've completely bucked the trend. I went shallow and I was able to make a check in every one of those tournaments and almost make the cut in a couple of them fishing shallow when 95% of the rest of the field was fishing deep. So here's what I'm talking about. It's like when I go to Kentucky Lake in June, I know how to fish deep. I know how to get out and grab the ledges. I know how to fish the channel intersections. I know, about the shell beds. I know about, the stumps, the deeper grass, all that type of stuff. I know how to do it. I've done it, but I know that I cannot get out there and I can't compete with the Jason Lambert or I can't compete, with, Randy Haynes, these guys that are just like absolute experts at it. So for me to try to get out there and compete in a tournament against guys I know are so much superior than me, it's like I'm just throwing my chance to win the tournament away. But say, for example, that 95% of those fish at Kentucky Lake are out on those deep ledges in June. There's also 5% of those bass that are shallow in June that are not getting fished for. So here's what you can do as far as like versatility versus strength. If you're in a body of water that goes against the way you like to fish, the technique is just not set up for the way, you don't have to fall into that. Go look for that water, even though it's a small amount of water, that is the way that you like to fish, and maximize that. Focus 100% on it. If it's a matter of fishing isolated laydowns and those laydowns are 10 miles apart and you've got to run 60 gallons of gas out in a day's time to hit enough laydowns to catch a limit, then that's what you have to do. But in that Kentucky, that's one of the things that has proved me over that is that you don't have to fall victim of versatility all the time as long as you have confidence in your strength. No matter, and it's the same with David Fritz. I remember back when David Fritz was at the top of his game, like in the mid 90s, we'd go to these bodies of water that everybody was catching them up shallow on a spinnerbait or flipping. And that's how all the fish were being caught. And Fritz, every single time he'd find a little wad of fish out off the bank that nobody fished, even if it was at an oddball time of the year, and he'd catch them, because he fished his strength all the time. So it's a judgment call. I mean, when you're talking about, when you're planning a trip to a lake, or like in my mind, I'm planning a trip to a tournament, I'm always thinking in my mind, it's like, yeah, I've got like a dozen ways that I know the fish are going to get caught, and I can do all those dozen things. I know how to do them. I know how to do them good. But what is going to give me the best opportunity to have a high finish in that tournament, or if you're just a fun fisherman, to have the best day on the water? And that's a judgment call that nobody can really make until they see all the variables surrounding it.
For sure, and I really like all those examples. I give a ton of examples too where I do the opposite, where I love fishing offshore, and I would go fish offshore when everyone else is fishing down the banks, like Lake Dardanelle. In the springtime, one of the best ways to go catch them in May is to go swim a jig in the grass or fish lily pads. And everyone would do that. And I would do really well in May tournaments by going offshore and fishing shell beds in like 3 to 5 foot of water on Lake Dardanelle. No one was doing that, especially like 10 years ago when I was doing it. And it's more popular now, but some of those first fish that started moving off the bank, I would crush them doing that. And same thing on some lakes, like I actually saw you on Table Rock when I saw you earlier this year, Andy. You guys were catching them on a jerkbait on Table Rock, and that's how you guys were trying to catch them, and you're catching good fish. But I went out and fished rock piles in 35 foot of water, and I was catching them that way. And I could very easily have gone and thrown a jerkbait and caught them that way, but that's not my strength. I'm not going to beat you fishing a jerkbait, but I might be able to go offshore on some deeper rock piles and catch them. The key to that, though, is that I have a strength that I know I can leverage. Randy has a strength he knows he can leverage. The problem I think a lot of new anglers run into is they don't set themselves up for success when they're learning to get better at fishing. I know a lot of you guys who listen to the stream are probably maybe only 2 to 3 years into your serious bass fishing. And maybe you want to get better, you want to improve your game, be more competitive in tournaments, or just catch more fish in general. If you're going to do that, my one recommendation is to take maybe a year or two to determine what style of fishing you like Randy mentioned. Do you like offshore fishing? Do you like shallow fishing? Which one appeals to you? If you don't like fishing offshore, just don't do it. If you don't want to spend the money on the electronics, if you don't want to go out there and learn the electronics and keep up with all that stuff, and you get annoyed by it, you don't have to become an offshore fisherman. It's not necessary. You can go fish shallow year-round on pretty much any lake in the country and catch fish. Now, you might not win every tournament, but in certain times of the year, you're going to be way better than everyone else because you'll understand that shallow water game. Now, on the flip side, if you really like the offshore game, like me, and it makes you excited, you want to spend the money on electronics, you want to learn it, go all in with the electronics. Don't go and fish half the time on the bank, half the time offshore. Focus almost 80-90% offshore. And it might take you a couple of years to get really good at it or get even competent at it. But once you do, you're going to be really consistent offshore when they're out there. And then if they're not biting offshore, you can always go back down to the bank. Or if they're not biting up shallow, you can always, well, it's hard to go offshore, but you can always, try some offshore stuff. But in my opinion, I feel like you should pick one approach that you like, especially if you're not going to fish the professional tour or fish open level competition or something. Just pick a style that's fun for you and that's exciting, and just get really, really good at that. And that's what I would recommend. What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, no doubt on that. And also, Johnny, a lot of that has to do with how much time everybody has. Because, say, for example, you live on a lake. Say if you had a house down here at Table Rock Lake and you had a dock on the lake, and you could walk down there every evening and make a few casts. If you're in a situation like that where you have the time and your situation is set up where you can spend a lot of time on the water, that makes becoming versatile so much easier to do, because you can go out there and try stuff, experiment with it. But if you're like a lot of people and you live in town or you live out in the suburbs, you got a family, you got a full-time job, you got to mow the lawn, you got to take care of household stuff, and you just don't have much time. The time that you have is maybe relegated to maybe one day a week, maybe even one day every 2 or 3 weeks. You just don't have that much time on the water. The thought or the whole concept of becoming super versatile is not realistic. And that's when you get back to like what you said. You don't have to do that. You can just develop techniques that you enjoy fishing and get really, really good at it and just become a master at those particular techniques. And that way, that you can catch fish with those techniques, even when it may not be the ideal condition. For example, at that last June tournament we fished at Kentucky Lake, when Lambert won the tournament with like 90 some pounds, catching them all on the main river ledges, I was flipping a jig in 12 inches of water, 60 miles away in dirty water, catching fish the way that I like to fish and still having a good tournament. And that's something that every single person can do. But I don't think when you're talking about versatility and becoming a better angler, that the whole topic of time can't be underestimated, mm-hmm. because versatility comes with experience, it comes with time on the water, it comes with years on the water, and everybody's situation is just different. Everybody can't be a Jacob Wheeler where they spend all their energy, all their time thinking bass fishing 24/7. I mean, most everybody out there just they have other things in life that they spend their time on. And I think a lot of the listeners here, it seems like to me, the guys that I take on the instructional trips, most everybody that is listening today, they fish maybe some type of tournament. Maybe it's a local buddy tournament once in a while. Maybe it's a club tournament, whatever. But it seems like a lot of people that are that follow the channel, fish. They like to fish competitively to a minor extent. And like I said, if you're wanting to do that and you're wanting to do good locally, I mean, in my opinion, it's better to really get good at a few strengths.
For sure. And one thing that Dan Ham 3344 asked, he said, is the best way to work on a weakness to simply do that method all day with the goal of learning and not necessarily catching? I would 100% agree with that. If you want to learn how to catch them offshore or learn to catch them up shallow, force yourself to do that all day, and don't expect that you're going to be mastering that technique the first day you go out, the first week you go out. It might take you 15 fishing trips out on the lake to get to the point where you can even catch one fish every next trip you go. Get one bite, especially if you're fishing offshore or doing something kind of off the wall. And it might take 3 or 4 years before you can consistently catch 4, 5, 6, 7 fish every time you go. Now, some years you might be able, or some times of the year, like in the spring, you might be able to go try that new technique and catch 20 bass doing it. But then if you try to do that in the summer, you might catch 0 bass, and you have to relearn where are the best bass position, what areas of the lake are the best, what baits are the best. And again, it might take you a 3 or 4 year time so that you can consistently catch them using a technique year over year. So don't think about learning to improve your weakness as I'm going to go fish 3 times and fix my weakness. It's like, I'm going to go fish for 3 years to fix my weakness. Would you agree with that, Randy?
Yeah, no doubt on that, Johnny. And a lot of the motivation to become versatile has to do with how much success you have on a certain technique. For example, if you go out and try a new technique and you just crush them on it, say you get out there and you throw a swim bait for the first time and you have one of those epic days where you have a 30-pound bag on a swim bait, you're going to be hooked on that particular technique. And the more that happens, the more success that you have on techniques, that is what encourages you to become more versatile. And and vice versa, the techniques that you go out there and struggle with, those are the ones that you have a hard time and you may consider them your weakness. For example, like with me, probably the least favorite thing I like to do is throw a Carolina rig, even though I've caught a ton of fish on a Carolina rig, and I caught one of my biggest bass ever on a Carolina rig. But for me, it's like I just don't enjoy it. I don't like messing with rigging the thing up. I don't like the type of places you have to fish it in. And even though I'm versatile enough and I can use it and I've won money in tournaments on it, I just don't like to do it. So, like I said, a lot of it just how people get motivated to become versatile or students of a certain technique has to do with their success they've had on it. I'll go back to Tommy Biffle again. There was a period back when in the late 80s, in the early to mid 90s, when Biffle was just a dominating force in the sport. And him and I always wound up in the same water because I'm from Southwest Missouri. He's from Northeast Oklahoma. We both fished the same type of water growing up. We learned to pitch and flip shallow. So we'd always I don't care if we were back in North Carolina fishing or wherever, we'd always wind up in the same back of the creek or up in the back as far as you could run up the river all the time. And it became sort of a running joke because Tommy and I, inevitably, every practice, we would run into each other. I mean, multiple times during the day, and we pull over and talk. And there was a period of like 5 years that every time I pulled up to talk to him, and this was every tournament, he would have three rods out. He'd have a black and blue jig, he'd have a black and chartreuse jig, and he'd have like a salt crawl. He'd have three flipping sticks out. That was it. It didn't matter where we went. Once in a rare blue moon, we'd pull up there and he'd have four rods out, and the fourth one would be a spinner bait. And I always joke with him, it's like, man, you're getting versatile. You got the spinner bait pulled out this time. But you can't argue with his success. I mean, he would flip and flip and flip and flip, and he would look for that specific type of water to where he knew that would work. And he didn't have to get 30 bites a day. If he got 5 bites a day doing what he wanted to, that was great. And he was able to make a long career out of it, win a bunch of tournaments, and win a lot of money.
For sure. That's so key, finding that water that is productive for that technique. And one thing that I thought was fascinating this last year is I was trying to basically, I spent the majority of my early YouTube career trying to just go out and catch fish. And I got to a point halfway through my YouTube career where I had a lot of videos on catching them on a football jig and a crankbait, or a jig and a crankbait. And I made a YouTube video actually showing how many big fish I was catching on a jig and a crankbait. And I wasn't throwing a jig and a crankbait necessarily that much more than other baits. I was maybe throwing them about comparable to other baits, but I always just would catch bigger fish on those baits, which is really weird. It was weird to me, but then last year, I tried to get away from throwing a jig and a crankbait because I threw it so much. I wanted to make videos on their topics, and I started throwing drop shots, shaky heads, swim baits, all this other just stuff that I didn't really have a ton of experience with. And I was catching a lot of numbers. I would catch fish, but I wasn't catching the quality fish. Now, this year, I went back to just getting away from that, and I have the videos with you, Randy, where we do the shallow versus offshore. And my focus, again, now is just go catch fish. I don't care what I catch them on. And if you look at most of the videos where I catch them, I'm catching my fish on a jig and a crankbait. That's pretty much it. And especially that football jig, the Fish the Moment offshore jig from Jewel. It's fascinating that my size of quality of fish now has actually increased this year by like a pound. I'm catching a lot more 3 and 4 and 5 pounders this year than I was last year, just because I went back to that football jig, which I know catches good fish. I have a lot of confidence in. Same thing with the crankbait. And it was like I actually did worse the more versatile I got, even though I was catching fish. And I think that some people get in that trap too, is that they may still be successful getting versatile and trying different techniques, but at the same time, they are going to end up doing worse because you have too much going on in your head. You don't just buckle down and say, I'm going to go get 6 bites a day on a football jig and catch my fish like I know how to catch them. You're like, ooh, I can go catch them on a swim bait or a topwater or a shaky head or a drop shot. And it just messes with your success. And I find that that's super common. The more versatile you get, it actually hurts you until you get to a point where you're versatile at everything. And that's like where Jacob Wheeler is. There's like a tipping point. You don't want to get too versatile or it gets almost bad. Would you agree with that?
That is exactly right on. There's versatility it's a double-edged sword for sure. I mean, because it's, I've seen so many times just on my own fishing where like I said, I knew how to do so much stuff. I would go to practice in a tournament and I'd spend 30 minutes on one thing, then I'd pick a rod up and 30 minutes something else. And then by the end of the day, I used a dozen or more different techniques and I still hadn't really figured anything out because I was just always switching and I wasn't trying to really refine and commit to any one particular thing. I was hoping that every time I picked up a new technique, that I would catch fish with it immediately, and that would throw me in the right direction, and I could just stay with that one technique the entire time. But it never works like that. It's like versatility. I have seen it probably just like what you said. I've seen it hurt more anglers than I have seen it help. Because what happens is and like we talked about earlier, it's like the only people that really capitalize off of being extremely versatile are the freaks of the sport, the freaks of nature and bass fishing. They're the only ones that can go to a body of water and they can say, hey, this is what I need to be doing because these are the conditions and I'm going to commit to it and I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden at 10 o'clock in the morning, something changes and and they go, "Hey, something changed. I know exactly what I need to do. I'm gonna switch gears and try a different technique." That's sort of like in pro golf and in professional golfing. I've had a chance to golf with a couple of professionals, and it's like they are so far advanced in their sport that they don't even think in terms of hitting the ball straight. They think in terms of working the ball all the time. They can hit it wherever they want to, but they can actually work the ball. And everybody and the average golfer just wants to hit it straight. And that's sort of the same in bass fishing. You know, you certain anglers, like I said, they're just so far above everyone else that they don't apply to everyone else. But for the most part, like I said, I think being too versatile is going to frustrate you a lot, particularly if you're a competitive angler. Now, if you're somebody that's just a recreational angler and you just really enjoy trying new stuff, then that's great because you don't have any pressure on you. I've got a friend that he that just loves to bass fish, and he keeps up on all the tournaments and he keeps up on everything, but he has no desire whatsoever to fish competitively, zero. So he loves fishing new techniques because he can take his time with it and he doesn't have any expectations, and he's never disappointed because if something doesn't work, that's just the way it is. But he just really enjoys trying new stuff. So a lot of it just has to do what, like I said, with what you want to get out of the sport as far as in the big picture in the long term, and that really determines how much energy you need to put on being versatile or not.
100% agree with that. That's spot on. I think that's just a big challenge that versatility is. Everyone wants it. Like kind of what you said about Jacob or the guys who are like the freaks of nature. They know when the conditions change what to do and how to do it. But that came from probably hundreds of thousands of hours in the water. I don't know if that's even possible, but like if you think about it, they're spending weeks and weeks a year fishing. The only way you're going to know how to adjust perfectly to all these different conditions is if you're on the water on all these different types of lakes, all these different situations countless times. And that's, again, not attainable for most anglers. And one comment we had from Ben S is that versatility is having all of the techniques at your disposal, but figuring out one or two to stick with to be successful on that day. Now I would actually disagree with that, because while versatility is that way where you have it all at your disposal and things like that, that is the definition of versatility. Not that I disagree with that, but I disagree with that approach. I think having all the weapons at your disposal actually hurts you going into a tournament day or a fishing day if you're trying to be competitive. Sticking with one or two techniques all day is probably going in and saying, hey, I only have 5 options at my arsenal. I'm going to make one of these 5 things work regardless. And if I don't, I zero, I don't catch them. And that's maybe not that appealing for a tournament guy or like a tour level professional, but for a local guy, that will get you a lot more success than having 75 different baits and techniques that you think you can catch a fish on and knowing them all. And that's kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, but that's just the key is getting, I would say even like if you get 4 techniques throughout the entire year, 4 ways where you know you can catch them and you're really good at those 4 techniques, that's probably all you need at a local level. Would you agree with that, Randy?
Yeah, specifically. Yeah, that's depends upon where you're fishing at for sure. As far as some lakes are more conducive to being having more techniques, at their disposal. Some have just a handful, but like I said, everybody's situation is different on that. I mean, if you look like where we fish here, where Johnny and I fish a lot, we fish a lot in the Missouri Ozarks, and this particular area here, there's a lot of different things going on. I mean, we can catch like tomorrow. Johnny and I could go out and we could go to Table Rock Lake and we could catch fish on a crankbait in 2 foot of water, or we could go out and Johnny could find them in 35 or 40 foot of water on the same day. Plus, there's probably another dozen techniques that are working in between that. But if you went to a lake like another lake we fish, like Grand Lake, for example, there may be only a handful of techniques. There may be fishing a big worm or a jig in the brush pile or on points, and then maybe some docks and shallow cover, that type of stuff. So, you know, the anglers that are more versatile, they become like that because where they live geographically in the country. That's why if you look at like a lot of the top tournament anglers in the country, a lot of them come from Texas, Arkansas, Missouri. These areas that have a lot of diversity to their water because those anglers were forced to learn and become versatile at more techniques than some of the anglers, like say, for example, in Florida. Florida, when you look at the anglers historically on a professional level, not all, but most of the Florida anglers have become specialists where they win a lot of tournaments when they get into that environment, but they struggle everywhere else. Florida anglers, for the most part, are known to struggle a lot on the national circuit as a whole, simply because the areas that they learn to grow up fishing, they're just not conducive to a versatile the other techniques available on different bodies of water. So, like I said, a lot of it just depends on where we were raised at and where we fish at all the time. It comes with that.
For sure. Like, especially like where I grew up in Wisconsin fishing, which was, you don't need that much versatility. But like in Arkansas, where I spent most of my teen years, within a hour of my house, you had Lake Washita, which was deep, clear, and had grass on one end. It was dirty and shallow up the river, so you could fish 20-foot grass beds, or you could run up the river and fish jetties. You also had super deep, clear lakes with no grass and standing timber. You had the Arkansas River. You had smaller lakes. You have like 7 different types of fisheries. You have like Ozark-style lakes, all within an hour of where I live. So I was able to get a lot of experience on a lot of different techniques, and I tried a little bit of everything. So I got pretty good at all kinds of stuff, and I don't really use a lot of those skills anymore, and even like for my skills up in Wisconsin. And that's made me versatile for the YouTube channel, which is really good. But again, that took me years and years and years and years and years to get there, and all I focused on was fishing when I was younger. That was all I lived, eat, breathe fishing as well. I didn't get to fish as much as maybe like a Jacob Wheeler does or did, but I still fished a lot. So, if you see me being really versatile or Randy really versatile, it's because Randy, he spent 30 years traveling the country fishing professional tours. I got a lot of versatility just from my limited experience, as a younger kid. So we are probably more versatile in general than most people you might see on YouTube channels. At the same time, though, if you notice, we still don't use all of the tools in our toolbox. How many times would you say, Randy, in fishing in Oklahoma in these areas, do you even use maybe 10% of what you know? Like, I know I don't use hardly any of the stuff I've learned on a lot of my lakes.
Yeah, we get locked into the favorite baits and techniques and things we like to do. I mean, that's one of the biggest. It's just sort of human nature, I guess. You stay with stuff that works for you, particularly as you get older as an angler. But one of the things that I think a lot of maybe people that are struggling with this a little bit can sort of take some comfort in is that, say for example, that you don't want to be overwhelmed by having to learn every single technique out there. You can become versatile with a handful of your strengths. And what I mean by that is, say for example, take jerkbaits. Jerkbait fishing is one of my strengths, and in jerkbait fishing, like, the mega bass jerkbaits that I fish, there's like a dozen different variations and models of mega bass jerkbaits, different profiles, different sizes, different actions, different colors. Every one of them is designed to do something different. So just in that realm of jerkbait fishing, there's a lot of room to become versatile within that particular area's strength. It doesn't matter if you're pitching or flipping. There's dozens and dozens of variations of jig profiles, jig sizes, of color variations, of trailer variations, of combinations, of line size, weights. There's just like an endless amount of variables in the areas that you may have strength in. So, say for example, if you have 5 or 6 things that you like to do, learn to become more versatile with those particular things. Maximize every element and every aspect in that particular technique, and that really makes your strengths much more versatile in the long run. And I'll take examples of guys that are good with swim jigs. I mean, swim jigs is another category of baits that, there's so many styles, so many colors, so many different ways to work them, so many different applications to use them in it. It's not like you can say, okay, somebody's really good with a swim jig and that's their strength. There's a lot of room for versatility within that technique. So it all goes back to attention to details. I mean, bass fishing, it's bass fishing. That's why I always go back and I say this, it's the most difficult sport that there is, period, because you have so many variables. You have so many controlled variables and uncontrolled variables that that's why it's nobody ever attains like perfection in it. I mean, it's all everybody out there. Everybody's always constantly evolving, constantly learning, constantly breaking down old trains of thought, and that's what makes it such an attractive sport, I guess.
Sure. Well, I think we did pretty good justice to that topic there, Randy, and want to give a couple quick shout outs here in the chat and then also do a quick housekeeping stuff. One thing is thanks for a $10 super chat from Walking on Water. Wow. He said, I got my Fish Moment jigs in yesterday. Can't wait to put them to use on Sheeran Harris Lake. Google Superhuman Lures. Wow. When you get time, keep up the great work, guys. Thanks. Appreciate that, Walking on Water, and glad you got the jigs in. Hopefully you guys are getting your jigs in. We literally got swamped with jig orders, guys. You guys are incredible. If you haven't checked out the Fish the Moment offshore jig, actually let me pull this up real quick because it's pretty incredible how big the initial response was to this jig. Let me start sharing my screen here. You can go to jewelbait.com if you guys want to check it out. It's the Fish Moment Offshore Jig. And you can see here, due to overwhelming sales, shipments on the Fish Moment Offshore Jigs could be delayed 30 to 45 days. This is ridiculous because all these jigs are produced in the United States by Jewel. And really the biggest holdup is that we ran out of skirts. We had like thousands of these skirts. And I got told by Jewel, there's no way we're going to run out of skirts. We have all the materials possible. And you guys bought so many jigs that you stocked them out of skirts. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So we're getting skirts in as quickly as we can from the supplier. They're like working overtime to get jig skirts to us. And once we get those, we can ship them out. We're getting jig orders in slowly but surely. But like we need like more than like one shipment of skirts. We need like multiple skirt shipments to cover the orders on these jigs. So demand should be under control here. Hopefully in about 30 days here, we should get all the orders out, and then we're going to order like mass quantities of skirts and stuff, and then soon these will be dropping on Tackle Warehouse and other places. But this is my number one confidence bait, Randy. When you say like a swim jig, I can throw this football jig in so many situations. I flip it up shallow, I throw it offshore in 50 foot of water, 30 foot of water, brush piles, shallow water, offshore grass. I can throw it so many ways and catch them. And we actually have some nice comments down here too already, some reviews. Someone said they've already caught their personal best on this jig, which is pretty crazy. And then says the jig comes through brush and rock really well. So I appreciate that. And if you guys have got your jigs, definitely let me know how they're working. I definitely am a believer in this jig. It's really, really works. And so once we get the skirts and everything in, then we're going to be good to go. And just thanks for the great response on this. And so that's that. And then the other thing I want to go through is I want to just let you guys know again about some of the stuff on fishthemoment.com. One thing is that I have set up another advanced bass fishing electronics class that you guys can sign up for on fishthemoment.com. It's going to be September 17th. That's a Thursday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is a limited attendee class. There's only 30 spots available. The last class booked up like 3 days after I posted it, and it was like booked up 2 weeks before the class. So sign up as quickly as you can. Basically, this class is focused on helping you find and catch fish with your electronics and getting into the nitty-gritty of like how do you identify if a spot has catchable bass? Should you even bother fishing there? Which spots maybe have a spot where you can catch 2 or 3 fish, or maybe 1 fish, or 15 fish? What baits to throw in there? How the conditions affect this? How the current flow, the wind, all this stuff affects offshore fishing. It's like the nitty gritty that I don't get into in a lot of my YouTube videos because there's so much to get into there. So I do it in a seminar format where I have 3 hours to like walk you through all of it. And none of the content in here is repetitive of my YouTube videos, so you don't have to worry about like me going through like how to identify bass on the fish finder. I have videos on that on YouTube if you want that. And then we're also going to be doing seminars with Randy coming up on some shallow water seminars and techniques, so be on the lookout for those. Another thing we're doing is we have some on the water lessons available that you can actually book with Randy, and you can go out on the lake with him for 8 hours, and you can work with him on some on how to find bass based on seasonal patterns, locating fish, and also advanced technique training for specific techniques like crankbaits, jigs, jerkbaits, topwaters. And with this, Randy is not going to be doing any electronics training. That's not really his expertise. I'm working on actually getting you guys some electronics training options for lessons here pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. But if you want specific techniques and like how to find bass, how to follow bass around the lake, these are the lessons. And so anything on that, Randy, you want to add?
Well, I would highly suggest anybody that wants to learn how to fish offshore deep to book something with Johnny, because I've been out with him, several times now over the last month, and I feel like I'm in kindergarten when I'm out in the boat with you on the offshore structure. I thought I knew a lot about bass fishing, but there is so much detail and so much stuff that information that I've just learned from you, just watching you, run your graphs and explaining how the fish are set up and explaining what they look, like, and how to discern different types of fish based upon how they're positioned around cover. It's a science. I mean, it's an art form within itself. So, yeah, if you guys are interested in learning how to fish deep, I mean, you're on the right channel, man. I can tell you that.
Well, and all the shallow techniques too, Randy. I've learned a ton from you. I went out with Randy one day in the back of the boat while he fished shallow crankbaits on Table Rock up the river, and it was like eye-opening. Like, I literally would have never fished any of the stuff Randy fished with the retrieves or anything like that. Like, I would have never been here doing any of this. And Randy, we caught like 30, 40 fish, like just catching them like crazy. So Randy knows his stuff as well. And if you're not in on all the electronics and offshore game, but you want to go catch a ton of fish, Randy can help put you on a lot of fish. He's really, really good at what he does as well. So definitely just heads up there. And you can just basically contact Randy by just sending him an email. You can fill out this form and it'll shoot him an email. And then last thing is for our lake breakdowns. You guys may have heard about this already, but we're doing personalized map breakdowns where you can actually go in and get a personalized map with 60 different areas across 4 sections of your lake. And Randy spends anywhere from 3 to 4 hours putting these together, and we actually do seasonal map breakdowns that you guys have probably seen already on the channel, and we're going to be doing a lot more in the fall. And we actually put together a list of all the lakes we plan on breaking down so that you guys know what we're going to be doing, and if the lakes are not on this list, then most likely we're not going to be doing them, so I would definitely get a personal map breakdown of that lake if you want that. So that is that. And there's only 4 available each week, so definitely get them if you want them. They go really quickly, and I restock them every single Monday. Anything else there, Randy?
Yeah, that's a really good tool. Like I said, for anglers, that doesn't matter how much you fish the body of water that you're on. I mean, these breakdowns, like I said, I've fished so many of these lakes across the country that it's just liking to share a lot of the stuff I've learned about it, seasonal patterns within it, and it gives you some really good starting points where you can get in there. You can sort of see where these fish need to be setting up, and we explain different ways to approach them. And then you can take these areas and you can duplicate them in different areas of the lake. So it's really a big time-saving, product that we're offering here.
For sure, and all the suggestions are always spot on. All the offshore suggestions too. I'll double check them too just to make sure you got stuff. And Randy always has all the spots I would pick, so he knows what he's doing on the offshore game. Just because he doesn't know the electronics as well as I do, he knows where the offshore fish are. So don't worry about that. Like, I literally never have to go in and like, oh, maybe I need to add an offshore spot or two. No, they're always there, 100% of the time. So Randy's he knows his stuff. You guys know that. I mean, he's legend. So don't worry about all that. So there's a ton of good information there. And so that's that. So that's a bunch of plugs and stuff. Hopefully you guys weren't too bored with all that. But what we want to do now is actually start answering some questions from you guys. So there's a lot of questions that have already been asked that I'm going to try to go through. If you have more questions, just type @FishTheMoment in the chat and then type your question and just start feeding those down there so we can have enough to answer. And I'm just going to scroll back to the top here and start shooting some questions at you, Randy. So first one here is... one second here. Let's see here. Question here on... sorry, I'm trying to read through all of these. Oh, Timo says, I saw you on a kayak fishing channel. When do you sleep? That was a question towards me. Johnny, when do you sleep? I see on a kayak fishing channel. I don't sleep. That's actually the secret to my success. No, but for real, I'm gonna be actually getting a kayak from Bonafide Kayaks here. Hopefully, next couple weeks. I'm gonna be making some kayak content for you guys because I know a lot of you guys are interested in that and doing some offshore kayak fishing. So I'm really excited about that and big opportunity there with Chad Hoover. That was the channel I was on. So go check out Chad Hoover's channel if you want to learn about kayak fishing in general. And we're gonna be collaborating on a lot of content, and I'll be doing a lot of the offshore kayak fishing. And so excited about that. Have you ever kayak fished before, Randy?
A little bit. I just on some ponds. I've never been on lakes and stuff like that, but it's really appealing to me because you know how much I like just the old school, shallow, more primal way to fish. I really like that whole concept of kayak fishing. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. Another question. I was trying to find one before you were while you were talking. Here you go. From Mark. Mark Carter asks, would you say learning to fish a jig could be the most versatile technique throughout the year? What do you think on that, Randy?
I really don't think that is the case because you know jigs anymore. It's like I said, they're sort of a specialty lure, and based upon the geographical part of the country that you're in, you know they're more productive at certain times of the year than others. Now, given that, it depends on what you classify as a jig. I mean, if you're talking about just a straight pitching and flipping jig, that's a big limitation. But if you open it up like in the football head jigs, ball head jigs, finesse jigs, compact finesse jigs, swim jigs, then it opens up a lot of different variables to that. But as far as just when you say just a straight jig fishing, which most people would consider like a 3/8 ounce jig with like a Zoom, super chunk junior on it, that's not really an area you can be too versatile on it. To me, it's like, it's just another one of those things you can add to your arsenal. If you are fishing in a lake that has a lot of rock in it, like here in the Ozarks or maybe some of the places, Eastern Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, those areas that have lots of channel swing, rocky type banks on it, yeah, then, you can really incorporate that to be a big player all year long. So a lot of it just depends on, the type of jig you're talking about and the area that you're fishing.
Yeah, I would say that if you expand to all jigs, so swim jigs, hair jigs, if you put like a hair jig in there, a football jig, all flipping jig, if you put all that together, then I could say you could probably just throw one type of jig. You could fish that year round and catch fish. And if you learned all the different types of jigs, but just learning all the different types of jigs, that could take you 5 years. Just to get good at when to fish a hair jig, a football jig, a swim jig, a finesse jig, a casting jig, a flipping jig, a heavy flipping jig. That's like 7 different types of fishing right there. That's
Yeah.
enough for 5 years worth of work. And one thing I will say is if you do learn how to catch and roll on a jig, you're going to do well in tournaments because that is a jig or a tournament winning bait. A jig is definitely a tournament winning bait.
Yep.
Awesome. Next question from Jay Crow. He asks, do you think that the MLF format hurt KVD or is he just on the decline? It's kind of a controversial question, Randy. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'll tackle that a little bit. To me, it's like there's a reality in the sport, and Kevin's getting at that age. It's like if you look back at all like some of the top anglers in the sport, even like the top level or like the second tier level, they sort of hit their stride. Most anglers hit their stride like in the early early to mid 30s into their early 40s. And once they start getting into like 50, and I think Kevin's over 50 now, isn't he?
Yep.
Once they start getting into 50, every single one of them starts tapering off on their performance. And I think that's a combination of a lot of different things. It's like we got to have reading glasses to tie knots. You got a lot more stuff going on in your personal life. You get locked into certain techniques that you've had success on, incredible success on in the past, and you don't be quite as versatile as like we talked about in the show here. So for Van Dam, it's a combination, in my opinion. It's just he's getting older. He's got more stuff on his plate. He's got more things that demand his attention and his focus. Probably gets locked in. He's a shallow water power fisherman. Gets locked into that mindset, and all that stuff combined together contributes to performance starting to go down. And that's just a natural process in the sport. It's like, I don't think anglers should fight that. I think they should sort of accept that gracefully a little bit. Sort of like when an Indian gets to be an elder back 500 years ago, they were sort of respected in the tribe as for their wisdom. They may not be able to go out there. They weren't as good a hunter. They're not as good as hunters and gatherers as they were back in their 30s, but they still have a lot to offer in a different way. So, and not that they can't be successful in tournaments, but it's like it's just you sort of have to accept that's just part of the cycle of life we all go through.
Good stuff. I will agree with that, and I don't know if I have any more to add there. So next question is from Table Rock Kid. He asks, what percentage of Randy's top 10 finishes have been won using his shallow water skills versus other techniques?
Every tournament that I've ever won in my career, both nationally or regionally, with the exception of one, has came, shallow water fishing, less than 5 foot deep for the most part. I did win one tournament deep cranking one time, a fairly big tournament, a regional tournament. But other than that, it's been all shallow water oriented. And I think if you look back, I think that most tournaments are won in shallower water, like less than 10 foot of water, less than 5 foot of water. If you listed every tournament won nationally over the past 20 years, I think you'd see that breakdown pretty heavily towards shallow.
And that might do a little bit too with the tournament schedule. Is very skewed towards that January through May. There's
Right.
not as many
Yeah.
tournaments anymore that are in June, July, August.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. And that's when the offshore fishing shines. So, question from James Barron. He says, where will you answer our Facebook questions? We did a YouTube comment Q&A today, guys. And if you haven't checked out that video, go to the YouTube channel, Fish the Moment. And we answered all of your questions from our YouTube comments. But for Facebook questions and Instagram questions, I actually want to start doing some Facebook Lives that we can do with you guys. And I think that'll be really fun. And Randy and I will just set up a camera and just go live on Facebook. And so if you haven't followed the Fish the Moment Facebook page and Instagram page, definitely go do that. And also, if you go like and comment on a post on Instagram right now, you'll be put into a giveaway. And I'll pull up one of these little giveaway bags right here. We're doing $50 giveaway packs of different baits. They're all kind of different stuff. A lot of it is some old striking stuff I have, different jigs. There is some Zoom baits from Randy. We got some other like beef jerky, bridge for beef jerky. There's lots of good stuff. Soon I'm going to be doing some even bigger giveaways with like tackle boxes, all kinds of stuff. So we're going to be doing lots of giveaways here in the next couple months, really to drive people to subscribe and follow our Facebook and Instagram pages. There's a lot of good content we're throwing on there, and we don't want you missing anything that we're doing because there's a lot of fun stuff and a lot of cool stuff that Randy and I are going to be doing. So definitely follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, at Fish the Moment. You can also follow our personal pages and Randy's personal YouTube channel, Intuitive Angling with Randy Blockett. So there's a lot of other content we're putting out as well. So just stay tuned to all this stuff because there's a lot happening. Anything else there, Randy?
Yeah, like I said, we appreciate the followers and the subscribers. I mean, that's why Johnny and I are doing this, and that's how we're able to do this is with the subscribers and the people that follow us. So just know that everybody out there that has taken part of that, it's much appreciated for sure.
For sure. And I'm seeing all the comments here, guys, too, like from Chris Kessler, who said, just wanted to chime in and let you guys know how much I enjoy the channel. Y'all are doing such a good job. Appreciate that. And we've got, see here, thanks Fish in the Southeast, sent several different comments. Who loves Johnny's videos? Fish in the Southeast, if you want to send me an email too about your questions about growing YouTube channel and influencers and stuff, just shoot me an email, johnny@fishthemoment.com, and I can go back and forth with you on that. We can talk about that maybe on a sidebar. I'd be happy to kind of help you figure out sponsorship and YouTube and all kinds of stuff like that. Mark says, love these videos. The conversation is gold. And then says, love them. Best fishing series on YouTube that I found. That's from Brent W. And then Dan Ham says, can't get enough. So really excited about that. And there's a lot of other great comments on here as well. So another question we got here, Randy, for you is, let's see here. Timo says, Randy, your story about the magazine shoot on your boat was great. Really enjoy your channel. Thanks. Got a lot of good comments in a lot of your videos, Randy. You're kicking butt over there with your stories.
It's so basic 101. I don't know how to do any editing on YouTube, so it's like Johnny said. I just put a camera on my face and go. So it's pretty basic stuff out there. I'm glad people are enjoying it though.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely good. One question here is everyone fishes deep in the summer up here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and this is from Mike Tureni. He says, "I crushed them of shallow on frogs and swim jigs. Do you and Randy use frogs and swim jigs at all?" I don't really use frogs and swim jigs that much in this area up in northwest Arkansas. But when I used to fish the Arkansas River in Lake Dardanelle, I threw a swim jig and a frog like nonstop. I won a lot of tournaments actually fishing a frog and a swim jig in May and like kind of April time on Lake Dardanelle and on the Arkansas River, especially like a lot of junior tournaments and some local stuff, night tournaments, stuff like that. But without grass on a lot of the lakes we fish, it's all rock. I don't throw a frog nearly as much. What about you, Randy?
Yeah, it's all situational, and I love anytime we're in a situation where there's a swim jig bite or a frog bite. I absolutely love it because it's probably one of the most exciting ways to catch bass, in my opinion. To me, a visual swim jig bite is probably one of the most exciting bites that you can get in flipping and fishing, even more than a frog bite. Um, so yeah, I anytime we get the chance, I love fishing like that, and it's a really good way to catch them. This time of year, and for like another month or so, all over the country.
For sure. It's awesome. One question we had here, Randy, I can't find the exact question, but I remember I reading it earlier and I wanted to ask you. Someone was asking us whether, I'll try to find the actual question, but is asking us if we plan on fishing the new tournament trails called the National Professional Fishing League, the NPFL. Have you heard of that, Randy? It's like a new league that's popped up.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it over the last year. In fact, I got some information sent to me from it. We don't have any plans on fishing it. It's sort of like it's an option to the anglers that have fished MLF, the Elite Series, FLW. It's sort of a tour level type of a circuit. They're gonna pay $10,000 down to 50th place, I believe, on a $5,000 entry fee. So I just know the little bit that I've read about it, and it seems like they're getting a little bit of interest in it. So we'll see how it goes. I don't think anybody knows at this point how it's going to work out.
Yeah, and for me personally, I honestly have no interest in trying to go fish professionally, guys. And I get that question all the time, like you should go pro, you should fish the tour and stuff like that. And with honestly just running fish at the moment, I am swamped as it is, and I really prefer doing this than trying to go fish professionally. I think it would help my credibility maybe with some people out there, Randy, if I went and like fished the tour and showed like my skills actually work on the national level or whatever. But for me, I don't really care. And I prefer the being able to see my wife every single day here at the house, go fishing when I want to, run my own business. It's a lot better than being on the road. Some people would love that and they would give up their left finger or their left hand to go fish the professional tour and elite series, whatever. And I've had the opportunity. I just decided not to. And that is basically the way it goes. So I'll probably make another video about this at some point because I get questions about this so often. But fishing professionally is not all it's cracked up to be, Randy, really. And I know you've talked about that before as well. But it's not all wine and roses like everyone says.
Oh, exactly.
So that's just wanted to put that out there. Let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, question from TJ Ellis. He asks, I fish a small water from a kayak, less than 200 acres, maybe 25 feet deep. I don't have a fish finder, but I can find topo maps for most lakes. What are the most important features to target? I'm actually going to make a video about this, TJ. I get a lot of questions on making videos about how to find fish offshore without fish finders, without electronics. And I'm going to actually make a video about that, put it up next week. And it's going to be somewhat like, here's how you find fish without electronics if you want to go do that. good luck. Here's kind of the process of doing it. I've done it before. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it can be done. It's just not very efficient. But then I also want to talk to you guys about how you can go take a $100 fish finder that you can buy at Walmart from the rack in plastic wrap and take a $99 or $100 graph and take that and go catch fish offshore. That's all you need. If a lot of people say I can't afford electronics, as long as you can have a graph that literally reads 2D sonar, gives you the depth in color, you can go catch tons of fish offshore with a contour line map and that. So I want to make a video about that. And a lot of guys will spend $100 on a fishing reel or a rod in a heartbeat. And I always say, go buy 3 Abu Garcia Black Maxes. They're $49 instead of $150 reel or $350 reels. You'll save that $100 and go buy a $100 fish finder. It will help you catch more fish than those 3 nice reels. So I'm gonna make a video kind of ranting on that and stuff. But any suggestions there, Randy, for them real quick?
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience fishing canoes, out off the bank where you don't know how deep it is. And for me, the way that I've always done it is like if you get out off an area that you think is good, like a point or whatever, do it the old school way. Just drop a bait straight underneath the boat, and you can actually sort of monitor how deep the water is, whether it's coming up or dropping off. And that's how they used to, when they used to navigate ships around the world. That's how they did it too. So it still works.
Yep, for sure.
Even if you don't have a depth finder there.
Yep. And I don't see a lot of comments. For some reason, the comments are not. They stopped coming in for some reason, which is weird on the stream. So if I'm missing your comments, guys, it's not. There's something weird with the system here, so I apologize on that. But yeah, I agree with you on that, Randy. One last question here, and then we're probably going to call it night. Is from Will Isaac. He says, Randy, I enjoy the videos, but what are your thoughts on so much pressure on lakes like Stockton, Table Rock, Grand because of COVID, and then making videos showing the spots and techniques that you're fishing? I guess his question is, why are we giving up spots on these lakes when there's already enough pressure out there and we're giving up the juice to other anglers? It's just going to... I've heard this argument before from people where it's like, we give up so many spots and techniques and we're making it harder for the people who already know how to fish to catch them, because now more people are going and fishing these areas, more people are fishing where the fish are, and it's making it harder for the people who already know where the fish are. And my response to that, I'll say my piece first, is that my goal is to grow the sport. I want more people to go catch more fish. And I apologize if there's guys who've been fishing these lakes for 30 years and they've had their secret spots out there for 30 years and they know exactly where to catch them, and they can go out on the spot and they've cast on the same exact log for 30 years and caught them. And I go out in the video and I put a contour line map showing the spot, here's how to find them, here's how to catch them, and I find it just by using my skills and what I'm doing offshore. And I think a lot of people get upset about that because they're like, you're giving up spots, you're hurting my fishing. Well, at the same time, there's new anglers who want to get into the sport, and they are struggling to even get 1 bite a day. And if they can go get 1 or 2 bites, it makes them way more excited about fishing, and it's going to cause them to have a lifelong passion for the sport, which helps make the fishing industry better. It helps support the industry I love. It makes people happy. And if you love to fish, why wouldn't you want other people to share in that joy of catching fish? You love it, obviously, if you're that experienced and can find them and catch them, and it's your passion and hobby. Why wouldn't you want more people to share that hobby? The only thing is that you don't want people fishing. You want people to share the hobby, but not fish your spot. Get away from my spot. And that, to me, is kind of like, it's a hard dilemma, but in the way I've embraced it is that I want more people to be able to enjoy the sport and catch them. And if that means burning up some spots, well, go find more fish. And that might be a little bit harsh, but that's what I kind of say. What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, the thing about that is there's no secret spots anymore. If somebody thinks that they've got a secret spot on a lake, that's just not the case, because the mapping technology we have and the sonar technology, they have eliminated any offshore sweet spot secret areas. Same with shallow fishing. It's like people know to run up the creeks and the rivers and throw a square bill crankbait. People know how to scan off points for man-made brush piles and fish them. The difference is, and what, back to his question again, is that things change all the time. There's always environmental changes. There's water level changes. There's water temperature changes. There's weather patterns that affect a body of water from year to year. There's water quality changes, water quality issues. So a lake it's a dynamic, ever-changing fishery So the best areas a lot of times are always going to be fluid, and they're going to change all the time. And yeah, you may have one little drop off that you found on your own years ago, and caught a ton of fish on it. But like I said, everybody knows about it. There's just no secrets anymore. I'll use here's an example. I told you about this, Johnny. I'll share the story with you. I started fishing offshore Grand back in the early '90s before anybody did. I mean, my mom and dad had a trailer down there. I spent hours idling with a flasher, with a map, and a compass, and I found a bunch of offshore places that I had to myself for years. And I found this one place that was like a little bitty subtle drop off in the middle of the lake that I just happened to be running down the lake, and I just glanced at my flasher and saw it drop off. And it was a little bitty drop off that was only like 10 feet long in the middle of the lake, out in the middle of nowhere. And for 5 years, I had that place to myself. Nobody ever fished it. It was full of 5 and 6 pounders. As soon as mapping technology came out, that very year, people started showing up on it just out of the blue. So to get to the back to the initial thing, there's no secrets anymore offshore. It's fishing the conditions that you find yourself out on that particular day.
Yeah, fish in the moment. And one thing I always tell guys is that I used to fish the college or the high school fishing world finals, and it was on Lake Dardanelle 4 years in a row, which was fortunate for me because I live like an hour from the place. And I finished in the top 10 all 4 years of that event out of like 230 boats. And all 4 years I fished that event, I never caught a single fish off the same spot throughout the entire time. Like, if I caught them there year 1, I never caught them there again year 2, 3, or 4. I fish brand new water every single year, every tournament. So I could have given the spots that I was fishing to everyone in the field from year 1 to year 2, and those spots were not good anymore. From year 2 to year 3, those spots were not good anymore. I had to refine my fish every single year, and I always found new fish and was able to catch them and stay on them. And so a lot of times, too, fishing pressure can hurt spots. Once everyone knows about a spot, it's not good anymore. So what we're trying to teach here is we're giving away spots, yes. But what we're trying to teach on Fish the Moment is not here's a spot, there's a spot. It's how do you go take the spot that we give you and then take that and expand and find other areas that are similar to it and catch fish in different areas under different conditions. Because the spots we give you, they might be good 1 week out of the entire year. But the rest of the year, that spot might not be any good. And yeah, we burned one spot. But if it helps people all over the country learn how to take those ideas and catch more fish, I believe that that's worth it. And there's more spots that have fish than the 3 spots we give up each video, put it that way. Would you agree, Randy?
Yeah, definitely. And most of the time, the real awesome spots, the places that are just real obvious, really good community holes. I mean, they get outfished by the more subtle stuff, and that's another thing that we try to sort of teach a little bit is to focus on the more subtle structures, whether they be shallow or deep on there. And a lot of the map breakdowns we do, it's just like what Johnny said. We're like a signpost that just sort of points you in the right direction, and then you can take that information and you can expand it and experiment on your own to make that even more productive.
Yeah, for sure. And I know there's more comments coming in, guys. For some reason, like 20 minutes ago, the stream just stopped showing me new comments. So apologize if I'm not getting all your questions. But we're actually going to call it a night here, guys. And I think this is a really good live stream. We got some controversial stuff here at the end, maybe. We talked about versatility. We're all kind of all over the place with these live streams. Hopefully you guys enjoy. If you do, leave a comment down in this YouTube video after it's posted to YouTube. And also, I'm going to be continuing to try to post these live streams and all the content to the podcast, Fish Moment Podcast. I've not been consistent with that, guys. I apologize. I've been trying to just get YouTube videos out and everything else. So I'm going to try to get a good process for getting those podcasts out for you guys. I know you guys enjoy those. And if you haven't found those already, we are trying to post all of these longer form videos, like discussion videos, onto the Fish the Moment podcast on the Apple iTunes app as well as Spotify. So definitely check those out. It's a pretty cool way to kind of consume Fish Moment content. And just a heads up here at the very end for those of you who maybe missed it, just a reminder that we have personal map breakdowns on fishthemoment.com. Also offering on-the-water fishing lessons with Randy, where you can go out in his boat and check out different techniques, learn to find fish based on different seasonal patterns. These are not electronics training classes. Those are not available through Randy, but I'm working on those here hopefully very soon. And then also I have a new virtual seminar, an advanced bass fishing electronics seminar on September 17th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. 30 attendance max, and I've actually had 6 people sign up for the class during this live stream. I'm checking my phone. So if you guys want to sign up now, because like the last time it filled up 2 weeks before the seminar was there, and there's huge demand. And I've talked about this enough during the stream, so if you want to know more about it, go back in the stream, and I've kind of talked about what this is about. But people seem to really enjoy it. None of the content is repetitive from my YouTube channel, all new content. So I want to get all that out there. That was kind of a at the end here, but anything else, Randy, you want to add before we end the stream tonight?
No, like I said, thanks again for everybody to join in. And like I said, drop comments. If you have different topics that you'd like for us to discuss in the future, feel free to send them that way, because, this is something that we're going to be doing more moving forward. And we always encourage and welcome new content ideas.
For sure. Well, thanks, Randy, for joining me tonight. Thanks, guys, for being here on the live stream. And we're going to be coming at you with a lot more Fish Moment content. I'm trying to post videos every 48 hours. So there's always going to be a video every other day coming out to the channel with shallow versus offshore videos, Randy's technique videos, bait breakdowns, bait testing, comment Q&As, Rick Clun videos. There's so much coming out, so definitely stay tuned to Fish the Moment. If you're not subscribed to the channel, and if you're one of these 200 people who are on the live stream right now and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Go subscribe to the channel so you're tuned in. It also helps us out as well. And if you're watching this back on the live stream on YouTube and you're not subscribed, please go and hit that subscribe button, set up a Google account, Gmail account, and just subscribe to the channel. It's free, and it really helps us out if you enjoy the content. It's a free and easy way to support us. So other than that, thanks again, guys, for checking out the